if we have infringed our own set of rules that we carry within ourselves, and that's consciousness, no one can liberate ourselves from the prison of guilt. No one. It doesn't matter if we're Catholics and we actually ask a priest to come and absolve us from our sins. We did that for many years, We did some sort of sin and we ask for a priest, and he will come and he will say, I absolve you. I absolve you. He was actually removing us from our sin. It doesn't matter how many times he said, I absolve you, we were still behind our own jail, the jail of the guilty consciousness, because we knew what we did. It doesn't matter if we ask a pastor to come and read the entire Bibles. If our consciousness is accusing us, we will not feel free. We imprinted so strongly what we have done that our mind constantly accuses us of what we did. Now, some people, they can feel guilty from things that they have done in this current life, or it's things that they have done in a previous reincarnation that bothers them so much. Andre Lewis, in the book Action and Reaction, he tells a story of a man who took pleasure in sending letters to his neighbors. And he will write in these letters awful things about one of the partners. He would actually be friends with the family, and then after he had enough trust, he would write them an anonymous letter and say, listen, when you go to work, your wife, she cheats on you all the time. I see this man coming in the house, and 3 hours later, he leaves and his clothes is all over the place, which tells me, they were making love. You're such an honest man. How can you allow this woman to do this thing with you? So obviously the husband would read this letter, and he would create this chaos within the family, and this man would actually go to the house and try to appease matters. So he was never suspect, And he did this with many families because he liked to see people feeling miserable. Have you noticed people like that in your life? They take pleasure in seeing other people's misery? Yes or no? I'm sure you have your share. Because we humans, when we don't have the courage, the strength, the stamina to work ourselves up to happiness, we usually like to push other people down so we can feel better than they are. This is why we say misery loves company. Why? Because by pushing someone down, by belittling someone else, I actually feel better about myself. It's an illusion because I'm not bettering myself. I'm just making someone feel worse. So that alone, my friends, if you have someone around you, relatives, in-laws, friends at your job, co-workers, if these people are addicted to put you down, pity them, don't hate them. They are miserable themselves. And this is why they like to make you feel miserable. So they have this illusion that they are better than you. Meanwhile, they're just awful in the inside. Pity them. Pray for them. Don't hate them. Because when you hate them, you're actually giving control over your life to them. Whenever you're pissed off at someone, in reality, all you're doing you're giving control of your life to someone who is very mentally ill, very mentally sick. So this man took pleasure in doing this. And in that particular reincarnation, in their lifetime, no one knew actually who wrote the letter. And they thought that whoever wrote the letter was a very beloved friend because they're just trying to protect everyone's well-being. When reality is just the opposite. But this man knew. He knew it was him because we cannot hide ourselves from ourselves. And as a result, in the next reincarnation, he reincarnated very mentally ill. And I'll explain to you why. Now, our physical body, it's actually subjected to our spiritual body. We are composed of 3 different things. The spirit, which is our intelligence, our personality, is who we are, the core of our being. And then we have our physical body, it's what you touch right now. And to connect these two compartments, you have the perispirit. The perispirit, it's what communicates the spirit with the body. For example, if I hit myself in my hand, my physical body receives the pain. The perispirit transmits the pain, and I, the spirit, feel the pain. If I want to touch this flower, I, the spirit, commands. The perispirit transmits the command, and my body executes the command. Now, there are different functions to this spiritual body. Whatever we do to our physical body, it impacts our spiritual body. So if I spent an entire lifetime smoking, what part of my body have I damaged? My lungs. As a result, the part of my spiritual body that represents the lungs is also damaged. In my next reincarnation, when I'm receiving both eggs from my mother, from my father, and the zygote is formed, the zygote, it's actually the liquid that will fall into this form that is the perispirit. The best analogy we can give is, think of you baking a cake. You first put the cake on the mixer, then it's a liquid. So if you want a round cake, you have a round form. You have a round pan. You put that and you have a round cake. If you want a square cake, that's exactly what you do. You got yourself a square cake. So the gametes, the eggs from our parents, are actually the liquid. And our spiritual body, it's the pan. It's what it's going to give form to the body. So if I have damaged lungs, whenever I receive those cells from my parents, my spiritual body will form a physical body that its lungs are damaged. So I'm born with asthma, I'm born with emphysema. Was it God that gave it to me? No. Was it the devil who did it to me? No. Was it my parents? No. Who did it? I did it to myself. I created that situation, that physical impairment. If I spent my entire life drinking, what am I damaging? My liver. And as a result, in my next reincarnation, I'm born with hepatitis A, B, C. If I'm overeating, there is so much that this body can take. Poor pancreas, the job of the pancreas is to regulate the sugar in your body. We all need sugar, but excess sugar, it damages the body. So the pancreas secretes insulin to control a good level of sugar in your body. But when you're eating just a little piece of cake, a little piece of ice cream, a little piece of gel, a little piece of carrot cake, and all these little pieces just mounts into a giant dessert, what are you doing? You're eating excess sugar. So your pancreas is overworking to produce all this sugar. It gets to a point that he can't do it anymore. So now your sugar level is high. What do you have? Diabetes. And your next reincarnation, you have already a damaged pancreas to begin with. So as a child, you're born with diabetes A, type B. Now what that does to the spirit that is reincarnated in that physical body, what it does is that from the get-go, that spirit cannot eat candy, can't eat chocolate, cannot eat sweets. From the get-go, it would discipline itself what it has to eat, because it could die if it takes excess sugar. So this is physical pain disciplining the spirit. Obviously, we don't need physical pain to discipline us. Knowledge itself should suffice to keep us from doing harm, but unfortunately, not you, we all are very stubborn. We wait for misery in order to learn. It shouldn't be that way. So this man, because he did all those atrocities, he reincarnated into a very defective body who had what we call nowadays autism. And he wouldn't look, he wouldn't stare at anyone, he wouldn't communicate, because the guilt that came onto him was so strong that he wanted to suffer for the bad things that he had done to people. And he created this mental illness for himself. When you see someone who suffers from a schizophrenia, for example, They are schizoaffective. We say that they are into their own little world, don't we? It's exactly what is going on. Their reality, the reality that we live in, is so unbearable, the pain, that they create their own little world because the suffering they have created. What the spirits tells us, that usually people with schizophrenia, not all of it, but the majority of it, are people who have done harm things to groups of people. And the pain is so unbearable that they create their own reality. They're into their own little world. Please be very careful with the interpretations of my words, but for example, politicians, what are they there for? To serve the people. And as a result, they don't have no one overseeing what they're doing, so they are channeling all these financial resources for their own benefit. They're supposed to provide school, healthy care, and yet they are literally stealing from the people that they're there to serve. On the next reincarnation, their guilt, they see all the mothers who starved because of their avarice, because of their selfishness and pride. And they see all the kids who went to crimes and didn't get no schooling because of what they did. And the pain becomes so unbearable that they create this world of themselves. And we call it schizophrenia, to run away from it. So guilt, it's a huge cause of depression. If we have done something, it's impossible to run away from it. Now, what can we do about guilt? What will be the solution to this problem then? Well, first of all, we should do with our lives what we're supposed to do. Grow. We're supposed to mature up intellectually and morally. Now, what can we do with guilt, which is the second cause of depression according to Spiritism? Well, whenever we do something negative, we feel the consequences of that action. It's the law of action and reaction. You sow and then you reap. The word sow is the action of the farmer to spread seeds on the soil. After a while, a tree will grow up and he will reap what he has planted. So if I have sown orange, the law says all I can reap is orange. So if I have sown suffering, all I can reap is misery, pain. So then what is the solution to this guilt that I feel? Well, let's start sowing peace. Let's start sowing happiness. As I start sowing happiness and peace, I will constantly and slowly remove the negative actions from my past. Our positive actions actually erases the negative acts that we have done. This is what Peter, the apostle, meant when he said, love covers the multitude of sins. What does that mean? That we feel this thing and that's it? No. Love in action is charity. So when I do good, I actually am benefiting myself from it. When I reach out to someone, when I provide someone goodness, that goodness doesn't come from me. The source of goodness is God. So before the goodness reaches that person, it will come through me before it gets to the person. So it benefits me first, then the other individual. This is why doing good is so good for whoever is doing it. It benefits the person who is receiving it, but it's much better for who actually is doing it, because it actually covers the multitude of your sin. It erases the negative. The positive cancels the negative. The message of Spiritism is let's suffer in order to grow. That's not what the message says. The message is let's work. Let's be useful. Let's help. Let's start being the victim and the needy, and let's be the one who provides, who gives. And as a result, we will find peace because we're doing with our lives what we are supposed to do. This is not Spiritism per se. These are laws of nature. When we look at the immensity of the universe and we see all the galaxies and we see our solar system and its planets, They are all sharing energy, gravitational pull. All these galaxies are depending on one another. If one planet decides to be selfish and says, I don't want to be part of this solar system anymore, the whole solar system goes into chaos. When we look at the world of the infinitely small, the molecules, we see the protons are being circulated by the neutrons and the electrons. If the electron gets selfish and says, I don't want to be part of this system anymore, I don't want to share more energy, the whole system goes into chaos. It's in the law of nature to share, to give. Usually when we think of giving, the first thing that comes up to our mind is to give stuff. Let me give you this pen that I owe, that sort of thing. To give material things, it's actually the easiest thing to do. First of all, what we're giving, it's not actually what belongs to us. This pen, it's not mine. It's temporarily under my management. The pen belongs to God, and I am temporarily on the management of this pen. Therefore, the use I make out of this pen will either benefit me or will either cause me pain. So when I give my pen to someone, I'm actually transferring a value that belongs to God towards that person. The same applies to our money, to our houses, to our titles. It doesn't belong to us. When we die, our coffin will not come with drawers that you could put your stuff there and take it with you. It's only you there, your flesh, your envelope, not your things. So giving of ourselves, it's truly giving something. Giving your time, your patience. You listen to someone. You understand them. Giving your forgiveness to someone. That is really something that you're giving from yourself. It's not from your mother. It's not from God. Your forgiveness, it's something that's truly yours because you're the one who has grudges against that individual. Only you can offer that gift to that individual. That's true charity. That's what cancels our negative actions from our past lives. This is what set us free from feeling this bad. Because when we hate someone, we keep intoxicating ourselves with hate, with grudges. So I will erase the guilt by doing positive. There's a lot of people who feel depressed because the things that others have done to them. And what other people do to us, it's really not important. What is important is what we do towards other people, because that comes back to us. There is a story about these two friends. They were taking their horse on this journey and got into a part of the journey that they were going through this very thick forest. So they got off their horse and they just pulled in the horse, and they didn't see there was this huge hole into which the poor horse fell into it. So now they're trying to pull their horse back out of the hole, but the horse is just too heavy, the hole too deep. So they're pondering to themselves, what are we going to do? And they start crying because they knew this would not be a good end to this horse. If we leave him because we cannot pull him, he's going to stay alive at least for the next 4 days, and he's going to starve to death. And that made them so sad. Oh my God. This will be horrible for our friend. He has been our means of transportation all these years, and this is how we're going to end him up, leaving him to die by himself. He will be crying, looking for us. So what do we ought to do? And one of them said, what if we kill him right now? I know it's an awful thing, but at least we have the certainty that his suffering didn't prolong. Killing would be bad anyway, but at least killing him now, he would not have this long and miserable death. Okay, so let's do that. So both of them got a shovel, and they're shoveling dirt on top of this horse, and they are just streaming with tears. They're killing their friend. Meanwhile, the horse who was down there, he felt the dirt over his back, and you know what he did? He shook it off. That dirt fell on the ground. He stepped on the dirt. They kept shoveling and crying. Meanwhile, the horse is just shaking the dirt out of his back. stepping on the dirt, and he feels more dirt, he shakes it off, steps on the dirt, and they're crying up there, and suddenly they see the horse's head climbing out of the hole. They had shoveled enough dirt, the horse had stepped on all this, that he was able to come out of this hole by himself. If people have thrown dirt at you, why do you still carry it over your back? Why are you just being want to be dumped there, suffocated, with all these negative feelings they have dumped it on you? It's not wise for you. We need to shake it off, step on it, and move ahead. If we're not concerned about our happiness, who will? We are responsible for creating our happiness, not other people. And the miserable people who are mentally ill would do their best to get you mentally ill as well, because they want to lessen their pain by making other people suffer as well. Shake the dirt and move up. If you have depression, I'm not saying do not take the medication. Go ahead, follow what the psychiatrist says to control the chemical imbalance. Maybe you do need some medication to have some control of the symptom, but the cause of the problem is your perception of life. Change it. We're not here on an eternal vacation. We are here to be useful and to grow. Make yourself useful. Be productive. Lessen the pain of someone else, because by doing that, your own pain will be lessening. When people come and talk to us and I ask them, how's your friend doing? How's your mother doing? When they're sort of complaining about problems, immediately this is what they say. Oh, he's doing well. Say, what do you mean? Well, he's getting six-figure every year. He got this great job and he has this great house. It's always speaking of financial aspect. So our definition of doing well, it's actually having money. Now, is it having money a guarantee of happiness? No. Money is just a narrow aspect of our lives. We have our social aspect, we have our physical aspect, we have our family aspect, and we have our spiritual aspect. To have balance in life, all these different aspects needs to be in check. If I'm tending just to one of them, once again, balance is impossible. If I'm just attending to my family, but I'm not working, I don't have a social life, I don't have a spiritual life, I could care less about my health, unbalanced. If I'm only taking care of my spiritual life, but I disregard everything else, how I'm going to survive? I live in the material world, I need food to eat, I need a place to live. If I only care about my friends and I forget about everything else, once again, unbalanced results. From giving just importance to one aspect, we need to have balance, giving aspect to all these different lives, all different aspects. A great psychologist trying to demonstrate this point of view, he said, think of a vase, and we have stones, we have pebbles, and we have sand. And he said, do you believe that I can fit all these things inside this vase? And the student says, well, no, you can't. So he started by filling up with the sand, and definitely the sand covered up much of the vase. And he tried to put the pebbles and the stones, it wouldn't fit. And then he says, well, let's try it another way. He now put the pebbles and then the sand and try to put the stones, it won't fit. But then he put the stones, pebbles, and then he did the sand, and the entire thing was inside this vase, the three elements. And the interpretation of this study is when you give importance in life to secondary things, you would definitely live the important stuff out of your life. Your spiritual life, it's actually the stones. They need to be there first. Your social life, family, it's actually the pebbles. And then your work life, it's the sand. Usually we do completely the opposite. Work is there first and everything else comes after. And of course, it won't fit. We would not have balance. Coming here on a weekly basis, it is one of the most therapeutic things that we can do to our lives. What is it that we're doing? We are changing our way of thinking. Because those people who we have harmed in the past, they are seeking revenge. We call these people spiritual obsessors. Let's say in a previous lifetime, my friend was married to this gorgeous woman. I wasn't married. So I asked my friend to stay a couple of days in his house. And after a while, I got into this relationship with his wife. And I convinced her, let's just kill this man and be together. Do you think I'm saying something uncommon here or very common? Uncommon or common? Common. I'm sorry, but I see it at my job, Now, this man is on the spiritual side. And on the spiritual side, you really cannot hide information from people because they don't have nothing else to do besides follow you. And one day he sees me paying whoever did it. So, oh, you're the one who did this. Do you think this man in the spiritual world will be my friend? Obviously not. He will seek me until he actually gets his revenge. And this sort of animosity, they go on to their next life. We find ourselves on the spiritual side and he makes me suffer. I reincarnate again, and yet he is after me. He's after me because if I feel any sort of happiness, it's his disgrace. So he makes sure he follows me to cause my pain. We call them spiritual obsessors. So as you can see, they are not actually the evil ones. We're the ones who have done them harm. This is why they are after us. When someone walks into a spiritist center and they say, you know what? I think I'm being followed. I have the spiritual obsessor in me. Do you guys do a mediumistic meeting? And says, yes, we do. And in the mediumistic meeting, what we do, we speak to spirits who are very sick in their minds. And we try to convince them that it's not good for them to keep following that person. That is the purpose of mediumistic mediums beyond other purposes as well. So people think that they can walk here and ask us, can you remove this spirit because my life is not going well? And then we're going to talk to this spirit and he's going to give up on you and he's going to go be in peace forever. No such a thing. This spirit will follow us until he sees that we're not the same person anymore. In reality, the reason he has control over us, it's because we are in tune with this spirit. The way we think, we are actually in tune. Just like magnetic waves, electrical magnetic waves, the same way antennas sends signals. Our thoughts are signals that we send to the spiritual world. And because of that, they're able to get in tune with us. So we are in harmony with this kind of spirit. When we come here and when we study, when we change our language, when we change the way we think, the way we act, in reality, we are in tune right now with higher evolved spirits. These highly evolved spirits are inspiring us to better ourselves. So it doesn't matter how much this spirit wants to in tune with us, he can't, because now we are out of sync with him. We are synchronizing ourselves with highly evolved entities that we call guardian angels, who are inspiring us to do our best. So we choose the kind of spirit that follows us. Do you want to know what kind of spirit follows you? Tell me what kind of thoughts is prevalent in your mind. If these are depressive thoughts, you have depressive spirits around you. If these are sexual thoughts, there are sexually insane people following you. If these are thoughts about getting drugs and getting high, this is the kind of spirits you have constantly following you. Do you have thoughts of bettering yourself? These are the sort of spirits that are around you. Of course, we have all these different thoughts, one way or the other, but the thought that prevails in our daily thinking is the sort of spirits that we are inviting into our mental world. So coming to a Spiritist center and studying and changing the way we think, it is a way to solve all of our problems. So we grow. Avoiding all unnecessary problems, because life is full of difficulties, and these difficulties are there not to crush us, but to make us better individuals as we solve them. So doing mediumistic meetings, it's a serious business that we need to be very careful of. Those who are participants of these meetings needs to be very well emotionally before they actually start participating in those meetings. And they're not the solution per se, because the solution to our problems, it's us. We are the cause of our problems. We are the solution to our problems. The center comes to be a school, a hospital, an office of work that we can grow our potential. But we are the cause of the problem. Be very careful what you choose in life. Sometimes things have a beautiful appearance, yet they are not the most proper thing to follow. There's a story about this man who once fell in love with this woman's handwriting. He was in Miami reading in a library, and suddenly he found this book, and in the margins of the book he noticed this handwriting. And he thought to himself, my God, for someone to write this beautifully can only be a gorgeous woman. So he anxiously flipped all the pages of this book to get to the last page of the book, because when we had no computers, if you rented a book, you marked your name at the last page of the book. So he did it, and there was a name of a girl. He was right. He was so happy about it, but then he went to check on the address. She lived in New York City. So, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So he writes her a letter, inviting her to an innocent friendship. So she reads the letter, and she says, indeed, I was down there in Florida for vacation. I read this book, and I loved it. And they start writing back and forth to one another. And they actually one day decided that they're going to meet each other. But he was a sergeant for the army. And this was the year 1943. He was called to serve. He was shipped overseas. And there he is in Europe fighting. And somehow they were able to keep the writing going on between each other. One day he writes to her and says, listen, I've known you for all this time through letters, and I have no idea how you look like. Can you send me a picture? And then she writes a letter back to him and says, if I am that important to you, my looks shouldn't matter. You know what he said? I got in trouble. She has to be very ugly. She has to be ugly. Why she wouldn't send me a picture if she was beautiful? Oh my God, I got myself into a lot of trouble here. But then he said, you know what? I'm living almost for this woman. I have a bunch of friends who have died in this war, and I think that what is keeping me alive is the fact that one day I have to meet her. So I don't care. Let me continue writing to her. And they kept the love letters going on until the war was over. And he says, let's meet each other for the first time. And she writes to him and says, well, since you don't have a picture of me, how are you going to know who I am? And he says, well, that same book that I have found in the library, I'll be carrying under my left arm. And for me to recognize you, I want you to have a red rose on your left shoulder. That's okay. You will look at the book and you will see who I am, and I'll look at you with the rose and I'll see who you are. And she says, okay, I'll be at the Central Station in New York at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. From there, we're going to go to the restaurant that is inside the station. So this man flies to New York City. and it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and he can't wait to be at 6 o'clock. So guess what time he gets into the train station? Do you think that he sits there in his hotel room and waits till 6 o'clock? No. He's actually waiting to meet this woman. So he gets there at 1 o'clock p.m. And you know how more anxious you get, the less time passes by? It drives you nuts, doesn't it? So he's walking back and forth, and he goes to the bathroom, he checks himself out, he washes over his face, he fixes up his hair, he comes back again, and just 2 minutes pass by, you know. He's just going crazy here. He goes back again, fixes himself, and time would not move on. And finally, 5:30 arrives. And now time gets by really, really slow. 25 minutes pass by, and he hears the train. He's so excited. He got sweaty hands. He doesn't know what to do anymore. The train stops. And then he's thinking to himself, this is the woman of my life. This is the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Oh my God. So when the doors opens up, this beautiful blonde lady walks out of the train. Her hair was so beautiful, full of undulations, and the dress just went through all the curves. You know, he dreamed about swimming on those curves just by looking at it, you know. And this woman almost flew onto him. He looked him deeply in the eye and said, "Going somewhere, Lieutenant?" And then suddenly he remembered the rose. She was not wearing a rose. And she passed by, and he felt so tempted. Oh my God, this is it. But I'm here to meet someone else. This is not the woman I'm here for. So he stops again, and he's looking at this woman just passing by. And then he reminds himself, oh, it's another woman. But this woman is so, and then he waits, and here comes another lady. Now, she was into her late 50s. The dress covered up the curve, but it was just one big curve. Her hair looked like she had all these spiders upside down. She looked so clumsy the way she looked, and we say in Portuguese terms that it seemed that she was chewed by an elephant and was spit out afterwards. You know, this is how, when you have a long ride, you know, you're all over the place with your looks. You really don't care, especially if no one is expecting you. But he looks at this woman, and she had the rose. And now he felt tempted just to run away. I'm not going to stand here for this woman. Oh my God. But then he remembered all the letters, all the strength that she gave him. And he says, you know what? This is going to be